And here's a somewhat related topic, depending on how you look at it. So, NBA Youngboy here, one of these newer generation hip hop people, went a little viral for comments that he made when he answered the question about how much he's into fatherhood and parenting, which is to say he's not into it very much. To be blunt about what he had to say there. So these are kind of, I don't even know how to take this, but I guess we'll get into it here for a little bit. But this one here says NBA Youngboy admits he's not big on fatherhood despite having 11 kids.
Sheesh.
Yeah. So, NBA Youngboy has admitted that he is not really big on fatherhood despite recently welcoming his 11th child. The 24-year-old rapper discussed being a parent in an interview with Bootleg Kev at his home in Utah, where he's currently on house arrest. While one of his children played on his lap, young boy was asked how important fatherhood is to him, to which he bluntly replied, I'm not really big on it, to be honest. It's a crazy topic because I'm not the type to sugarcoat nothing. He also said that because of his house arrest, he essentially sits around in one room all day watching TV. My kids and I bond a lot, but I'm honestly mostly really inside. At the latest count, NBA Youngboy has 11 children with 10 different mothers, including 7 sons and 3 daughters. The gender of his latest child, who was born in April 2023, is unknown to the public. One of the rapper's children's mothers is Floyd Mayweather's daughter, Yaya, who he's been vocally critical of in the past. After Nicolette Gotti, the granddaughter of the late mob boss John Gotti, made racially charged threats against Yaya, Youngboy said, I hope you do that B word in the worst way. 2 or 3 years from now, I don't give a F. I hate that hoe. And when it come to her daddy, that N word don't need to be in my mentions. I don't F with him. Now, I'm not gonna play the YouTube clip because we're gonna keep this thing moving along. But
Mhm.
basically, that is the interview that he did with Bootleg Kev, in which he talks about how he's not really big on fatherhood, which was the main takeaway that people had from this whole interview was him talking about how he's not really big on fatherhood. And people are saying, how much sense does that make? How can you not be big on fatherhood when you got 11 kids? So that's what created the dissonance with a lot of people and what caused this particular interview to make headway on the internet. Um, for me, I'll just say when it comes to this particular story, I'm not really going to chastise him for those comments because I think if you see his interviews and you listen to his music, it is very apparent that this kid is a victim of trauma. Speaking of trauma, from the last topic that we discussed, with Umar Johnson, this is what I'm talking about. So this guy is clearly a child of trauma. Now, I guess one can argue that Umar Johnson's narrative applies in this case because he is a sexually promiscuous individual who is emotionally damaged. But he to me is clearly a child of trauma. So I think this is less about the fact that he's not big on fatherhood, and it's more about the fact that you need to assess the kind of trauma and environment that this kid came from, because that clearly doesn't make sense. Although I will say this, I believe him. Like I think that he's correct. He's not big on fatherhood, because you can only flippantly father that many kids if you don't care about being a daddy like that. He's not somebody like Nick Cannon who's doing this on purpose because for all intents and purposes, he's basically publicly admitted to being a polygamist. NBA Youngboy ain't on that. He's just a child of trauma who doesn't understand the consequences inherent in irresponsibly fathering too many children. And his trauma manifested itself in him carrying on when it comes to family values in this way. I can only imagine he comes from an environment that is completely devoid of any kind of structure when it comes to family values. I think his own father, I believe, was sentenced to 50 years in prison for what he calls a robbery gone bad. So that right there is a bit of a microcosm that tells you all that you need to know about this kid's background. I think when it comes to this particular example, it's all about assessing his particular form of trauma because it's very clear to me that he is a child of trauma. And I do think that his comments make sense to me. I think someone who actually cares about fatherhood is going to approach being a dad in a measured way, which entail him being able to give the kind of time and attention to fatherhood that you need in order to do that successfully. And I think 11 children by 10 different women clearly shows that he is not giving the idea of fatherhood that kind of time and attention. So I do think that he's correct, and I do think that on its face, those comments do make sense. How can you be big on it when you do it that irresponsibly? But when I say do it that irresponsibly, that's not to chastise him, but more so to analyze the kind of trauma that he comes from, which is to say it is quite evident.
Yeah, I mean, good point there. Because this guy's clearly been traumatized. That's a good way of putting it, right? I saw a video. Now, mind you, the thing is with NBA Youngboy is that he is the guy. Now, I'm not gonna, because I ain't know bro by name. But when we were in middle school, bro, it was some dude that was older than us. He just kept failing. He was supposed to be at least in the 10th when we were in the 8th. The boy was driving a car to school and everything. And he had the ladies wanted him. They didn't care that he kept getting suspended or kept getting kicked out of school, getting bad grades. They didn't care. They wanted him. Now I don't know what happened to bro, but they wanted him when we were in school. I can't really think of nobody in high school that was that guy, but I know that guy was everywhere in the United States. I saw a clip just last night where this dude was basically saying, when we were in school, man, they had those kids in different classrooms. They had to separate it from these people. Then once we all graduate from high school, they just release them into the world. There was kids, and you can look at NBA and just know that he was always getting into trouble at school. And it wasn't like typical trouble. He was getting in trouble, probably even bringing guns to school and all of that stuff. He was that guy. And this is speaking on the levels of whatever traumas that he has to be that guy in the first place. And what's end up happening is he became that guy out of school. It's kind of like Kodak too. It's the people that was in the neighborhood, the area that was the air quote badass. The one that didn't care if they went to jail or not, those people. And what happens is it's kind of a cream rises to the top, if you will, of who's the more psychotic person. I don't know if you know TK, the kid that did the murder, ran
Yeah,
out of jail and then made the song.
yeah,
Prime example of another person who's out of his mind. But the whatever, the people, the industry, whatever, that cream rise to the top of people admire him. No different than those people in middle school that thought that this kid driving a car to school was live. But it's like, okay, but this kid flunked twice. We don't care. How you. And so NBA Youngboy is that person to these ladies, to the dudes that think that he whatever. And so he has people who buy into his badassery. And so the ladies are going to keep coming. And he's just going to keep treating this like he treated everything, not caring. So I can completely see and understand how he's not a big fan of it. The part of where he has to be responsible. The part where he has to be active and around.
yeah.
And he didn't have to do that unless it was for him. So him speaking from that perspective completely makes sense. It adds up to the character that he is. So I think that he's just that guy that was in those classrooms in those situations, didn't get any levels of rehabilitation at all anywhere, um, and picked up a microphone, and he brings off that raw energy of anger, frustration, and that young, angry, and frustrated people like to listen to. And then, because when this boy go on a rant, I mean, he can be as violent with words as any young person I've ever heard. And then he'll turn around and get super sassy on your ass and paint his nails and start, doing all this flamboyant stuff. So NBA
Zesty.
is zesty, good word. All right. So he's an interesting character. This falls right in line with everything about him. So yeah, this he's just that person. And you can look at the image right there where he's holding those two kids. There ain't nothing in those eyes. That boy is he's
Yeah.
just yeah, he's just that's just who he is, and that's why people like him. It's a wild thing, man. But I'm wishing the kids the best. I don't know how that's gonna go, but this to me comes off no different than any situation in the hood
Yeah.
where that same guy who was just that guy in the hood, and then he got a lot of baby mamas. Like, what? Well, this guy. Well, why this guy? Didn't you know he already had 4 baby mamas before you met him? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, didn't you know he dropped out and he did this? Yeah, 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 yeah. They like that edge that those people have. So those women are going to always gravitate towards those men. We don't heard the statistics about uh, how many men are actually fathering the community. It's not many. And so NBA Youngboy is one of those guys that are populating and being fruitful and multiplying. So this falls right in line with, unfortunately, with everything that we've seen throughout our community. And he just has a microphone and is well known. But this guy is no different than any other out of whack, badass in your town. So, hey man, I wish the kids the best, man. But uh, hey man, it is what it is. Hopefully they can cry in a Ferrari.
I think I would have been like if he had said I love being a father, I would have called Cap. I would have called Cap because you can't love being a father if this is your approach to doing it. So when he says the right answer was I'm not really that big on it, which is the truth. You're not, because when you approach it that loosely and flippantly, you can't really be that big on it because being a father takes effort, time, and attention and attentiveness. And you are anything but when you are 11 children in with 10 different women. It's not possible. So I think that he was at least telling the truth, as unbalanced and traumatized as he may be. He's that last week we did a topic talking about Glorilla because her fans got mad at her because they want her to keep making music where she's hating on men. And I was like, you don't have to hate all of us. Just deal with the type of man who's not going to traumatize you. And you talked about the people in the room with headphones on, the men and the
Mhm.
women, and they are made for each other. NBA Youngboy is the guy who's in that room,
Right,
and the women who have given him children are women who are in that same room.
right.
And so that's what happens. Those same women who have given birth to his children probably hate niggas. They probably do. And
Yep.
I don't. I use that word. Just take a look at our video from last week with
I'm
Glorilla.
about to say, dang,
Take a
JV
look.
Win going in.
Nah, just take a look at the video that we did last week with Glorilla talking about making synth music, and you'll understand why I said it that way. Because ordinarily I wouldn't just throw it out there like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
that's a
yeah,
direct quote.
yeah,
But
yeah,
those are the women who probably say that. They believe like they hate them, but they'll also father their children. And so it's a long winding road of insanity that they are driving on. And I just hope for the best for the kid.
yeah. The
Um,
kids.
and for the sake of accuracy, according to this article from Hip Hop DX, when he was 8 years old, his pops was sentenced to 55 years prison time. So he is just literally a child of trauma, and I think that that informs you on that type of thought process and approach to life in general. But good luck to him. Don't really care for his music, but then again, I'm not in that room with headphones on, so it ain't
Agreed.
made for me.
Yeah, agreed.